When a stranger needed help, Keanu Reeves and Tom Hanks didn't walk away. That sentence had been floating around the internet for a while, attached to small stories, photos, sometimes half-true, sometimes exaggerated. But what stayed with me wasn't whether every detail happened exactly as written. It was the feeling underneath it, the idea that two very visible, very busy people could still stop for a single human being who might never give them anything in return. One evening, sitting alone in my kitchen with a cup of lukewarm tea, I found myself staring at that sentence on a screen and wondering a simple question. Why is it so hard, sometimes, just not to walk away? It wasn't really about celebrities. It was about me. Because I could remember so many little moments in my own life when someone had needed something. Maybe not dramatic help, just presence, a listening ear, a quiet gesture, and I had hesitated. Sometimes I helped. Sometimes I didn't. And on the nights when I couldn't sleep, it was never the moments of helping that haunted me. It was always the moments when I turned away, or pretended not to see. I started to think about one day, in particular. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind you forget as soon as it's over. I was at a small train station, the kind with just 2 platforms and a single bench. The sky was grey but not quite rainy. People stood in their usual clusters, holding bags, staring at their phones, waiting for the next announcement. I was on my way home after a long, scattered day. My head felt stuffed with small stresses, unfinished emails, a difficult conversation at work, the vague pressure of not being caught up with life. I just wanted to sit in the train, put on my headphones, and disappear into some quiet corner of my mind where nobody needed anything from me. That's when I noticed him. He was sitting on the floor, back against the dirty wall near the timetable board. Not old, not young, maybe somewhere in the uncertain middle where life can go either way. His clothes were worn. Not torn in a dramatic sense, just tired. Too many washes in too little time. A backpack sat beside him, half-zipped, with some papers sticking out. His head was bowed, his fingers pressed to his eyelids the way people do when they're trying not to cry in public. People were stepping around him, giving him just enough space to pretend he was invisible. I caught myself doing the same. I looked, noticed, and then looked away. Automatically. But something in me resisted that small movement. Maybe it was the memory of all those stories I'd read, about Keanu Reeves sitting with strangers on benches, listening instead of rushing away, or Tom Hanks talking gently with people who ran into him on the street, making them feel seen rather than brushed off. Maybe it was just that his posture was too familiar. I had sat like that before. In bathrooms. In train stations. On the edge of my own bed. At some point, every one of us has been the stranger who needed someone not to walk away. Still, I didn't move. Inside my head, an argument began, quiet but persistent. You should go ask if he's okay. He probably wants to be left alone. You're just making excuses. What if he gets angry? What if he thinks you're judging him? What if you walk away and think about this all night? It's strange how heavy a single small gesture can feel before you make it. It's only a few steps, only a few words. But those steps have to cross the gap between comfort and vulnerability. Between it's not my business and I will let this affect me. I remember thinking how easy it must be, in a way, for someone like Keanu Reeves or Tom Hanks to be kind in public. Their kindness would always be read generously. Look how down-to-earth they are. Look how caring. People expect goodness from them. So when they sit with someone, or stop to talk, the story is already written in a positive light. For the rest of us, it doesn't come with a story. It just comes with risk. The possibility of awkwardness. Rejection, misunderstanding, But then I realized something. No matter how famous, no matter how visible, they are still just people making moment-by-moment choices. They don't become kind because of their name. Their name simply makes their kindness visible. The real work happens inside, in the small private space where we decide, again and again, whether to stay distant or to step closer. And right then, at that train station, the real question wasn't what would Keanu do, or what would Tom do. It was, simply, what version of myself do I want to be, here, now, when no one is watching and there will be no headline? The announcement for my train echoed through the station. I looked at the screen. 7 minutes. I took a breath, picked up my bag, and walked toward him. My heart was beating faster than the situation deserved. I was about to do the smallest possible thing, and yet it felt like my body didn't know the difference between this and something much larger. Maybe that's how we are wired. Social risk can feel as intense as any physical danger. I stopped a few steps away, giving him enough space so it didn't feel like I was hovering over him. "Hey," I said, my voice quieter than usual. "You okay? Do you need anything?" He didn't look up at first. His fingers stayed pressed against his eyelids. For a second I felt foolish, like a child who had interrupted an adult conversation. Then he took a slow breath, lowered his hands, and glanced at me. His eyes were red, but not from tears. More like from exhaustion. "I'm fine," he said, the word flat and automatic. I nodded. We both knew fine wasn't true, but fine was a safe answer. An answer that protected him from needing to explain his life to a stranger. "I'm waiting for a train too," I said, gesturing toward the platform, as if that needed explaining. "Got about 6 minutes to kill. Do you want some water or something? I've gotten an extra bottle." He looked at the bottle in my hand, then at my face. There was a pause where I could feel him judging my intentions, measuring whether this was pity or genuine care. "Yeah," he said finally. "Actually, yeah. Thanks." I handed it to him. He took a long drink, not desperate, just steady. The silence between us wasn't comfortable yet, but it wasn't hostile either. Just waiting. "Long day?" I asked. He let out a short laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Long month," he said. "But yeah, long day too." I sat down on the cold floor beside him, careful to leave a small gap between us. Not too close, not too far. Just enough to feel like we were sharing the same space. There was no dramatic confession, no movie scene revelation. He didn't suddenly pour his whole life story out to me. Instead, the conversation came in small, halting pieces. A job that had ended abruptly. An argument at home that left him without a place to sleep for the week. A feeling of being stuck between options that all seemed bad. He didn't say he was hopeless, but I could hear a kind of quiet numbness under his words, the kind that grows when you've been trying to be strong for too long and it hasn't really helped. As he spoke, I noticed something happening inside me. My own worries, emails, deadlines, minor conflicts didn't disappear, but they shifted to the background. Listening to him put my perspective back in place, not because his pain was worse and mine didn't matter, but because it reminded me that everyone is carrying something invisible. The world we see is always missing the weight people are holding just beneath the surface. I thought again of all the small stories I'd read about those two actors. Nothing spectacular. Just a man waiting with a stranded passenger in a broken-down bus. Another man standing in a long line like everyone else, smiling and chatting casually, refusing to act like his time was more important. Nothing that would earn them a medal. Just presence, over and over. People made a big deal out of those moments because we are all so hungry for proof that gentleness is still possible. That successful, busy people can still stop and look into the eyes of someone who has nothing to offer them. We crave those stories not because they are rare in essence, but because they are so often unseen. Sitting on that station floor, I realized that in everyday life, we are all constantly offered quiet, invisible chances to act from that same place. We just don't get articles written about it. We don't get comment sections full of praise. We just get a small shift in the way we feel about ourselves when we go to bed at night. At some point, I checked the station clock. My train was in 2 minutes. "I have to catch this one," I said, a little reluctantly. "Do you have somewhere to go? Somewhere safe?" He nodded. "Yeah. Friend's place. It's just a lot, you know." "Yeah," I said. "I do." I hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you'll be indoors tonight." It was such a small sentence, but it mattered to say it out loud, as if to acknowledge that in a different version of this day, he might not have been. He gave me a tired half-smile. "Thanks for the water," he said. "And for sitting down. Most people just look away." I wanted to tell him that I had, too, at first. That the difference between being someone who walks away and someone who stops is often just a few seconds of wrestling with yourself. But there wasn't time, and maybe it didn't need to be said. "No problem," I replied. "Take care of yourself, okay?" I stood up, brushed the dust off my clothes, and walked toward the platform. As the train approached, I glanced back. He was still there, but his posture had changed slightly. He wasn't folded in on himself anymore. He was looking at the departures board, bottle of water in his hand, as if the future might still hold some shape worth moving toward. On the train ride home, I kept thinking about how unremarkable the whole thing would sound if I tried to tell anyone about it. No one would retell it as a heartwarming story about a stranger. No one would write headlines about an ordinary person sitting on an ordinary floor, offering an ordinary gesture. It didn't feel like a good story. It felt like life, small, awkward, imperfect, real. And yet, inside me, it left an imprint. It wasn't pride. I didn't feel like a hero. If anything, I felt a quiet sadness, thinking about how many times in the past I had walked by someone without stopping. How many times I might have missed these small opportunities to see and be seen. That's the thing about kindness. We like to imagine it as something pure and effortless, coming from people who are naturally compassionate. But for most of us, it's mixed. It's messy. It shows up in moments when we are tired, impatient, shy, or scared of being misunderstood. It's not the absence of hesitation. It's what we choose to do with that hesitation. Later that night, I sat on my bed, scrolling again through those little stories about Keanu Reeves and Tom Hanks that people had shared. Keanu giving up his seat on the subway and smiling like it was nothing. Tom stopping in a park to sit with a couple taking wedding photos, turning their nervous day into a memory they'd laugh about forever. None of these things changed the world in any measurable way. They didn't end hunger or cure disease. But they did something quieter. They reminded the people involved that they mattered. And I think that's the real reason those stories travel so far. Not because of the names attached, but because they mirror a simple human hope, that when we are at our most fragile, someone will see us and not walk away. Still, there was another question lingering in my mind. If we admire this quality so much in others, why is it so hard to practice it consistently ourselves? I started to notice how often fear disguises itself as practicality. I don't want to intrude. They probably have someone else to help them. I'm sure it's not as bad as it looks. I wouldn't know what to say. These are understandable thoughts. They protect us from overstepping. But sometimes they also protect us from growing. They keep our circle of concern small and safe. What helped me that day at the station wasn't a sudden wave of courage. It was something quieter, a shift from asking, "What if I make this worse?" to asking, "What if I do nothing and later wish I hadn't?" That second question is less dramatic, but more honest. Because most of the time, the real regret in life comes not from the imperfect things we say or do, but from the moments we let pass while we stayed seated in our own comfort, watching someone else struggle from a distance. In reflective storytelling about kindness, we often place ourselves in the role of the helper. But the truth is, all of us have also been the stranger on the floor at some point, even if our struggle wasn't visible. Maybe we didn't look lost in a train station. Maybe we were sitting in a hospital waiting room, or staring blankly at a computer screen filled with unpaid bills, or standing in a crowded elevator feeling completely alone. In those moments, what we needed was rarely a grand rescue. We needed someone to sit down next to us, metaphorically or literally, and say, "I see that you're carrying something heavy. You don't have to explain it all, but I'm here for a moment." When I think about the idea